Well, thanks for having me virtually. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. The reason why I couldn't be there was a couple of reasons, but it all worked out well. But I do appreciate you letting me join virtually because I do like to. I like to play on a winning team, and I like to share success stories. I don't think there's too many of us like to talk about losing, although it's an important part of our lives when we do lose. Uh, uh, I'm almost 70 years old, and I'd rather talk about winning. So the reason why I'm not there, twofold. One, when I checked the prices to fly from Fort Lauderdale to Dallas, it was over $800 round trip. And I'll get into this a little more later, shortly. But we pride ourselves on being a very low cost airport to our passengers, to our airlines, and all that fits into the bottom line. And I figure what I got to share, I'll be able to do it this way pretty quickly and pretty effectively. The second reason is it is 9/11, and as Cornelius mentioned, that's a very special time to commemorate at airports and other places. But I did attend a lengthy commemoration of 9/11 this morning, and I really didn't want to miss that. It's very important. So that's why I'm not there. Listening to Cornelius and Gary, I felt like I'm from New York City, but I do get out and hike a lot. And I felt like I was hiking down a gravel road or something. And I said, boy, based on these last two presenters, I better turn around and get back to the fork in the road and go down another trail. So that's what I'm going to do real quick. I'll talk about my journey with Alert, and I'll talk to you about the nuances about the airport setting. And I'll be able to get us some checking my watch. I'll get us back on time here smartly. So the first thing let's talk about being I'm not in the audience. It was easy for me to sit here and critique everybody. So Gary, you hit a home run. I found your presentation captivating, interesting, and I learned a lot. So I don't want you to, self-deprecate yourself any longer. I loved your presentation, so thank you. Secondly, Cornelius, I've never met you, but you really depressed me, I must admit. But wait a second, don't do anything drastic just yet. You depressed me because I thought my numbers are really big over here, that I'm doing all this great stuff, and my numbers absolutely dwarf your numbers, where I almost sent the event that, hey, I'm not even going to present. My numbers are nothing compared to Cornelius. But I think Gary actually explained it all very well. And with that, Ruby turns out to be right when she said that the airports, or the airport in this case, is using the product very differently than everybody else. And it's very true. So Gary did a good job of outlining the differences between how he's using the product and Cornelius uses the product. Cornelius, don't take it the wrong way, but compared to what Gary and I are doing, you're pretty much in a sterile environment. I picture Bank of America as offices and lobbies and ATMs, and most of the places where business is getting done is air conditioned, and the people that want to be there actually want to be there. They're either employees that are getting paid very well, except for a few outliers that cause the problems, or they're your customers that have a reason to be there to do business. Gary, I got a sense that your business takes you far and about. It's not always in an air-conditioned setting. It could be in a remote setting where there's not a lot of physical security, cameras, patrols, law enforcement. So you have your challenges with that. I'll give you that. So my challenge is, why are airports different? We're really not, as far as the product goes, but we are as to what our risk is, what our vulnerability is, and our journey trying to address or mitigate risk. So we here at Fort Lauderdale, we're considered a Category X airport. I can't tell you how many there are in the United States, but it's a very small number of airports that are the most threatened airports. Fort Lauderdale happens to be one. A lot of it has to do with the cruise industry. A lot of it has to do with our proximity to other countries. A lot of it has to do with drug smuggling, money smuggling, human trafficking, whatever. We have all that here. But we are a Cat X airport, which means we're the highest regulated airports by the Transportation Security Administration, and in some cases, Customs and Border Protection. So with that, I have, which I hope you guys don't have, I have basically 17 inspectors of the Transportation Administration domiciled at my airport, just looking for things that don't look right. So you can imagine the amount of regulatory oversight that I get with that number of inspectors that are here 24/7. And if they come back to the office without findings or things they notice, their boss tells them, "You're not doing your job. Go out and find more stuff." So, so that's what I'm up against here. The other issues that I have here, the threats, the vulnerabilities. You probably remember about 7 years ago, we had an active shooter running through our terminal here. Every year, we detect over 100 firearms in our terminals. Basically, I hold a Super Bowl, the number of people that go to a Super Bowl, I hold that every day in my facility. And most of those people I don't know, and I don't know what they're carrying. So there's a lot of issues that turn out to be vulnerabilities for us here at Fort Lauderdale and in airports throughout the United States. So if you have an active shooter running around your terminal, that's one thing. And that individual came in off the street or actually landed from another flight, but basically he was in the public area of the airport. What's interesting to note, and this is kind of where alert fits in, is that a few days after that, we had an incident where an employee smuggled a gun into the airport, was able to get it into the sterile area, which is the area where the passengers board the aircraft. And he was working that day, or he was working that night, the night before, and he used his access authority to smuggle a firearm. He was actually a janitor, and he had it in a bag of garbage. He was working the night shift, the overnight shift, and he managed to place a firearm in the ceiling of a what I'll call a janitorial room where there's a slop sink and whatnot. And fortunately for us, that day there was a water leak. And when we sent our plumbers there to fix the water leak, they went up in the ceiling, and that's when they found the firearm. So we left the firearm where it was. We left everything the way it was. To make a very long story short, when the janitor returned in his civilian clothes to take a flight to Haiti, we nabbed him going up in the ceiling of that janitorial room to get the gun so he could smuggle it into Haiti. So that told us we needed to do something. So that's where we're at today. Just checking my notes, and I'm going to get back to my slides now. So that should give you a little storyline about the things that go on at airports and why it was somewhat different, but still we have the need for not only physical security and cyber security. So what I'll do is I'm going to go through the slides. I have some notes here. I do want to talk about our success. I do have, I got to give, let's do this up front because I'll forget at the end. Let's give Alert Enterprise, the entire team, a big kudos, attaboy, 2 thumbs up, whatever. I do have the Alert Enterprise team on my speed dial, and it is, as others have said before me, that I could pick up the phone, speed dial, in this case 6, and I get Ruby or part of her team, and it's, "Hi Frank, how you doing? What can I do for you today?" And that's important to me. I would say Alert is in the top 3 of my over 100. I don't want to call them contractors, but I'll call them teammates that provide me services. And the only reason they're not the number one is because I don't want to have to be locked in that somewhere I'm going to say somebody else is number one and they correct me and say, you said that alert was number one. So you're in the top three. You're probably very close to number one. But as the alert team knows, I'm pretty passionate about the people I do business with. So I want to get that out of the way also. So we actually did a competitive bid. It was brutal. There was maybe one or two companies out in the industry doing something like Alert was proposing, but they just couldn't get it right. I'm generally a risk-averse person, but I went against the grain. And Ruby, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I was probably one of the first that took a chance with Alert in the airport setting. And everybody at Alert knows how satisfied I am. So I am risk averse. So some of the challenges, I'll let the slide speak for itself, but I like to talk. So my notes are the complexity and increasing regulations from the Transportation Security Administration and Customs and Border Protection, the level and the amount of background checks, the frequency of the background checks, it was killing us. So I knew I had to automate. I'm not an IT guy. I'm a physical security guy, but I'm smart enough to know, I'm old enough to know, if you ever seen, what is it? I Love Lucy. And Lucy was working on the assembly line to put chocolate on the outside of strawberries. And every 2 seconds, they'd make the line go faster and faster. I knew I had to do something. So I wrote an RFP for my credentialing, what we call credentialing management system, Guardian. And the outcome of that process was Alert blew the competition away by a long way. And we started my journey about 5 years ago. We rolled out about 3 years ago. And I didn't even have any minor flaws in my rollout. And I could be pretty critical, pretty sarcastic about things, but our rollout was just about flawless. And even what we're doing today, with the amount of support I get, we're rolling through challenges that keep coming our way every day and just rolling right across them and staying successful. The costs were starting to kill us to do it manually. Whether you talk about labor, I pretty much I lowered the staffing level in what we call the credentialing center by half. I have happier employees. I have employees that now come to work with a sense of purpose, and when they leave with a sense of accomplishment. The real estate, I don't have a photo of it for the presentation, but you could fit about 12 average size houses of files that were in rooms in my credentialing center, metal file cabinets. It looked like an old dentist's office with all the files, but I had rooms and rooms and rooms and houses and houses and houses in square footage of files. Now I have a couple servers and everything's at my fingertip. It cost us a fortune to shred all those files, but we saved a lot of paper, so it was worth it. The other challenge we had was the time that it took our stakeholders, our customers, to get their credential. It was, you'll see it in a couple slides ahead, I'll show you, but it took way too long, too many visits, too time consuming, and it was just a gigantic problem. So we solved that. Consistency was a big problem. When you have 20 employees trying to do the same thing in the same office, invariably everybody interprets a little nuance, something differently, and there wasn't a consistent level of service, which I demanded. Processing time was very slow. We needed to speed it up because employees no longer hang around for 3 months waiting for a clearance to come in so they could start a job. They'll move on to the next employer, and sometimes they'll move on to the employer that's going to hire them the fastest because they need a job. So auditing investigations drove us to the Guardian. Record retention was becoming a challenge for us, and also cybersecurity with the various firewalls that we needed in place that Alert was able to deliver. So let me just look at my slides real quick. I think I covered it. Yep. So the process that you see in front of you, I'll just convert that. I love to simplify things as long as it's understandable. What I'm going to convert this slide to, yep, we took a totally paper process and completely digitized it. And that's the way it is today. As a matter of fact, I cannot remember the last time my credentialing center ordered paper from Office Depot. I think it was like 3 years ago. So we don't have any more paper trucks coming. We're not filing it. We're not paying for it. I don't have the fire marshal yelling at me. When am I going to get rid of all these papers? Single source of truth. All the silos have been removed. Can we just go back? Yeah, and what I want you to get out of this is up there, you basically had 3 trips to the credentialing center at my airport to become credentialed and have a badge. And at an airport environment, we still need a badge, a wearable badge, because that is one of our layers of security. You may not know this, but everyone at an airport is trained, and they must. If you're not wearing a visible badge on your uniform, you are challenged, and then you are escorted off the premise, and you're not able to get another badge for a long time. So it affects your employment almost permanently. So we still use a visible badge, and it reduced the amount of trips to our credentialing center from 3 to 2, and that's a big deal when you're trying to run airlines. That's a huge deal. So that's what I want you to get out of that slide. We were able to cut that down by 33%, which is awesome. All right, next slide. Yep. So the biometrics, so we do a lot of background checks, as I guess the 2 entities before me that presented do. But our main ones, we get a photo, we get a biometric, and from that we generate security threat assessments. We have to send out information to federal agencies, and we get a security threat assessment. Those come back that you hang around with a known terrorist, or you're a known terrorist, or you have done some other things that become highly suspicious of you working at an airport. So that's a security threat assessment. And then we get a fingerprint-based criminal history check, which is very accurate. And we have a list of disqualifying crimes. And then we have those are federally mandated. And then we have a local list of crimes which draw our attention. A good example would be, do you really want somebody convicted of child abuse working in your airport daycare center? Or do you really want somebody that's been convicted of numerous thefts working in the restaurant and lounge at your airport? So things like that pop up. So what I'm trying to get at is we have a lot of reasons to collect a lot of information, and we used various ways to collect it before alert. Now everything is one stop. We collect everything in one stop very quickly, and everything is integrated. Talking about integration, we do not use an off-the-shelf access control system. We do have a physical access control system. It's provided by a company that I can guarantee nobody's ever heard of in the audience, and that is Matrix, Matrix. It's very customizable. It's very sophisticated. We use that, and after I'm done presenting, you could ask anybody an alert, was that an easy integration? And I guarantee you they're going to say, no, it was probably one of our hardest ever. But you guys did it. I can't believe it, and I'm ecstatic about it. And that's 3 years ago, and I'm still ecstatic about it, because all of my colleagues in the industry told me I was going to fail and I'll be looking for a job. And it did not fail. It was a huge success. And now the entire industry is eventually going to follow what I did. I know that. All right, next slide. There's some, so let's just go through these real quick so I cover them. One identity record from, I call it from birth to death, onboarding to offboarding, and we have a lot of it. I have somewhere around, there's some stats further on, 25,000. It's not as big as Cornelius, but it's bigger than Gary, so I'm good being in the middle. But they all have characters, and they're all people, and I still have to onboard them and offboard them, and it's quite a process to onboard and offboard. The DAX Telos integration primarily is for the security threat assessment. So I have another integrator in the middle between myself and the federal agencies. They take care of my security threat assessments, my criminal history records checks, and then on every criminal history check, Cornelius probably knows what I'm going to be talking about. We continuously vet them every minute of the day, and that's called a wrap-back subscription. So if you're badged at my airport, if you have that credential there that's in the middle of the screen, and you wind up committing some kind of crime, once it's entered into the database, within moments, Alert is able to get me that information that's posted on other websites and other places I would have to go, but they get it for me real time. So I know, Gary, you were talking about the small number, but you mentioned, I think it was about 1,111 removing accesses. And when you said that, I said, that's a big number, because any one of those people of that 1,111 could cause you big problems. So, same thing with the integration with people that need to be removed from the system because of background checks or criminal history checks. Training, we have many platforms of training here at the airport. Fortunately, now they're all integrated into my credentialing management system. So you have to hit a certain amount or certain level of training to be qualified to get certain markings on your physical credential and in the database. And Alert takes the Guardian platform, takes care of all that for me. In the old days, we used to have to look it up. Somebody would make a mistake. Oh, I thought you had the authority to drive on the runways, but it was really the authority to operate jetways. Oh no, it was the authority to fuel airplanes. Now I don't have all that problem. Now everything's nice and organized, and once we use a series of signatories at the airport. We have about 1,100 different companies doing work at the airport. And we probably have a couple thousand signatories, people working on the accounts. Once they send us the information about what kind of access they need, we verify it, and then we issue that level of access. So there's no more mistakes like we used to have. We do most of our business through appointments, which has reduced our wait time to almost zero. Before we went to the credentialing management system, Guardian, it would be like going to motor vehicle. It was horrible. You would go there for hours. I'd have to have TV sets. I'd have to have bathrooms. I'd have to have water. I'd have to have catering sometimes. You were there so long. Now you have an appointment that you set up on your own. And as long as you come at your appointment time, we whiz you right into the office, and a few minutes later, you're out the door back to work. In the old days, you'd wait a couple hours, and your appointment was a couple hours. So it really streamlined that. I talked about our PACS integration, our physical access control. Just so you know, so you have some scale, we have about 2,500 portals where people can come and go through a controlled access point. About 5,000 devices. Generally, it boils down to one on the inside, one on the outside to get in and to get out. Badging and media, life cycle, issue. We have all the challenges everybody has with badges. Issue, it's damaged. The fueler got fuel on his badge, so it melted it. Stolen badges, return badges, dual badges, you name it, we have it. We are still working on role-based access. We're starting to segregate or bifurcate the airport in many different sections, so that just because you have access in this corner, you're not going to get access in that corner. And that's an ongoing process as we speak today. And without the Guardian platform, we would not be able to do what we're doing today with role-based accesses. We recently integrated our keys. We are reducing the number of what we call brass keys. Those are just the kind of keys you get at Ace Hardware. And we're at a cyber system where it's almost like card access entry, but it's on a key where we could disable your access at portals, and we can read off your key and off the portals the information about who's been using your key or who's been using your portals. So that's been a big plus. Audits compliance, we're going through one right now. It's really our first full audit where we're using what's available from the platform. In the old days, we used to tell the 1,000 or the 1,100 tenants, hey, send us a list of all your badge holders and we'll compare it to our list. And then we'll let you know all the ones you forgot to disable and all that other stuff. We don't have to do that anymore. Now, what we did this time is we took a report on a certain day at a certain minute. We started it and we went about 3 days monitoring it, and we had the platform analyze it. And what we did was we were able to see who had their IDs because we see them swipe. And then we were able to see maybe they don't have their IDs because we don't see any swipes from them. And we follow those up. Maybe they're out sick, maybe they're on vacation. But there's always a lot of reasons why people aren't swiping. But one of the big reasons we're interested in is if you fired somebody and they didn't bring their ID back, or they brought it back and you stuck it in your desk drawer and you didn't return it to us. So audits compliance are a big thing. So as a matter of fact, I just got a report, as it just flashed up here on my screen, out of about 18,000 badge holders. Over the course of those days, I have 58 people that have not swiped their badge in the time period. So now all I have to do is follow up with those 58 people and figure out what their problem is. So what a huge reduction in work. Reports are self-explanatory. One of the big ones we use is a stop list. As you can imagine, at our portals, some of them are staffed. All of our vehicle gates are staffed. So we maintain a stop list. So if Frank Capello gets fired after this presentation and I leave with my badge, I go home, then my badge number, my name would be on the stop list. So if I did show up at that physical checkpoint with my badge, they'd know right away I'm on the stop list. The system, the automated system, automatically detects it, and they'll be alerted with a red light and a certain kind of sound that I'm on the stop list and I should be denied access. Next slide. Yeah, the badge order, I just went through that. We used to have to do a full audit. Now, as I said, we do a summary audit. We have to do it once a year for 100% of our population, and we have to do 10% every month randomly, which we do, and we use the system now, and it worked pretty well. We have some kinks, working them out with alert right now, and things are shaping up really well. My staff said, hey, maybe next year we'll go back to the old way, because we had a couple of hiccups. And I said, not on my life. I said, get the hiccups fixed and you're going to see we're just going to push a couple buttons and our audit will be done. So no, there's no way. People, you know what it is about change. People are resistant, but it's working great. Simplified audits, badge audits. We got 58 follow-ups that we have to do. I guess that's a manual follow-up, but once the signatories know how this is going to work in the future, I can guarantee there won't be any more follow-ups. Next slide. I'm checking my watch, so I'm going to, these numbers don't pale to Cornelius, but it's pretty much the same. You get it. It's the same as what Cornelius and Gary are doing. The numbers are different, but the success is all the same. It's all right there in, I was going to say black and white, but it's black, white, and red. It's all there. Stolen media, I have a big problem. Lost media, I have a big problem. Renewing applications by regulation, we have to rebadge the entire population every 2 years. They have to renew their badge, which is basically a rebadging. So everybody that's like, oh, I hope we never have to rebadge, I get to do it every 2 years. Now, in those 2 years, there are certain clients I have, because they're irresponsible, that they have to rebadge every quarter or every 6 months or every year. So you probably know this already, but there's a huge turnover in the food and beverage industry at airports. So if they were to get a 2-year badge and they don't return their badge and they leave a week after I give them their badge, that badge remains unaccountable for 2 years minus 1 week. If I have a certain number by percentage of unaccountables, I have to rebadge the entire badge population again. That's a TSA regulation. So with the system, with the Guardian, I keep an eye on everything every day, and I'm able to do trend analysis and look what's going on. Big success. Pre-enrollments, yep. We want to get that done quick. So by the time they get hired, boom, they're in the system and they could start work. We turned the process around, like I said, that sometimes could be months to days. We turned it into days. So as a matter of fact, we are usually ahead of the HR department of those 953 authorized signatory management areas, which have probably about 1,500 authorized signatories. Not every company only has one signatory because of the 24/7 nature of airports. So we have a large number of signatories and a large number of actual people that have their fingers in the system. Next slide. All right. Hey, I had 2 extra slides, but you guys took them out. But I wrote a note on my thing that said, I'm not going to talk about the last 2 slides. Yeah, they're all similar. The success is the same. So what I'd like to do, if we could open up for questions, I'd be interested in any questions. The only thing I'll ask is, if you are going to ask a question, grab one of those microphones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's give a round of applause.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Questions, either online or in room? Yes.
Once again, this is Ed with Mosaic. We also have port facilities. And I heard that you said you have biometrics. Is that similar to a TWIC card that has biometrics on it as well?
Vikas, can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, the question is about biometrics. Is it same as the TWIC card? The question came from Mosaic.
Yeah, no. The TWIC card, no, it's not. I can select my biometrics here. It's not as regulated as the TWIC card, which you'll find at ports. CBP doesn't use the TWIC card here because our standards are very similar to the TWIC card, maybe a little more advanced in some cases. Their list of disqualifying crimes goes a little deeper. They have a little bit more discretion, but virtually it's the same, except that I can select the biometrics that I want to use. So for different areas, I could use different biometrics. But right now, primarily, I'm using fingerprint. I'm using some eye stuff in certain internal areas to the aviation department, but not external. We're not convinced that the types of workers that we have here, because they handle all different kinds of things, we're a little concerned about some of the biometrics. So we're not sold on facial. We're not sold on a couple biometrics yet. But primarily, it works the same way as a TWIC card.
Okay, any other question? Or team on the Zoom? Any questions? Yes, CT has a question. Yeah.
Hey Frank, it's Cornelius. Sounds like just a fantastic presentation you put forward, and it really sounded really similar to what we experienced at Bank of America. Right? We look where we are today, and it's just a tremendous success, and it's made the work in our respective organizations so much easier. But just as you experienced and you shared, it was that one right at the very beginning, those first 1, 2, 3 days, it was sort of like people like, hey, let's go back to the old system. But kudos to you, kudos to my team at Bank of America for just staying that course, because what we saw was that every day, just enhancements, improvements. And I really do think that that was just so indicative of the partnership, just working hand in hand with the client company, with the Alert Enterprise team, that commitment. And I'm very pleased and happy to see how successful and happy you are, because I can speak on our side, Bank of America, that we are very pleased, and life is a lot easier, and it does make a difference, especially when we're talking access control and the criticality of that particular function. So just kudos to you, and it was really good to hear your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cornelius. And you really didn't depress me, but when I was looking at your numbers, I was like, oh my God, I got to change my whole presentation. This guy's got the whole world. So I first of all, I appreciate your comments. It's truly been a team effort, and I can't tell you how many discussions I have with airports throughout the United States about the Guardian system and what I'm going to be doing and moving forward with what we call optional services, which is future work we're going to be doing with Alert. But I can't tell you the conversations I have with my colleagues that either they have a Guardian type system, a credentialing management type system, or they don't. If they do, they're going crazy at what I'm paying compared to what they're paying. They're like, how do you do it? And, you know, it's because we're efficient how we do it and the partnership. And then if they don't have it, they're like, why are you having such good results? And other airports that thought they had a system really don't have a system. And I'm like, you know, the devil's in the details. And really, it's about, in this case, two parties that are interested in success. So that's the way that goes. But while I got the microphone here, I do have a question for the audience. There are numerous people at Alert Enterprise that when I'm off to the side, they always say, Frank, I want to let you know that you are one of our best customers and you're so easy to work with, and we love working with you. It's a rhetorical question, but have you experienced that? And the reason why I ask you that question is because I really do feel like the team at Alert wants to work with me and they like working with me, even though I'm the biggest pain in the ASS you could imagine, because I demand results. So, but I do feel that way. And I do think that I am the best customer of Alert Enterprise because I offer them the opportunity to work here at my airport. So, so it's a two-way street.
Frank, Cornelius, again, hey, not to bust your bubble, but I think just this morning I actually heard that myself and Bank of America that we're the best team actually, and also when you think about changing that slide, don't worry about changing that slide, because you know, if the way I look at it, one is the same as 125,000. So if you have one, just multiply by 125,000, and your numbers are up there, buddy. You're doing just great. But I look forward to meeting you one day, Frank. I really do.
It's been a good journey, and I'm willing to help. In the aviation industry, I think we're a little behind on technology, believe it or not. But I know my colleagues are interested in automating and getting into what we call a credentialing management system. It's the only way to go.
Frank, Jesvir has one comment, and I actually have one question after as well. Go ahead. Okay. So I feel like sometimes these are great opportunities for people to kind of pass on some wisdom. And there are folks on the call that are still working with us as they look to deploy. Do you have one piece of advice for folks that are in consideration or are evaluating that, you know, you'd like to pass on as you know, a piece of advice to make their deployment successful? Obviously, we have a great team. We're supportive, but just from your perspective, some words of wisdom in terms of advice.
So I heard a little bit of it. I think the question was, is there something I could share with the group about when I started this journey, what I set out to do or what I learned? Is that the question?
Yes. So just some words of advice.
Sure. Okay, so I didn't need it in this case, but I took cost out of the equation. I didn't. A lot of times when I work for a county governance. Most contracts, the cost is the primary driver of the awarding of the contract. I didn't have that in this contract, and I will tell you that the alert team came in under budget. So it was pleasant. But overall, I would say Stephen Covey once said, "Always start with the end in mind," and that's what I did. I had a list a mile long of deliverables that I wanted this system to do, and they were non-negotiable. They had to be done, and the provider, alert in this case, stepped up to the plate for every one of those deliverables. And believe it or not, they taught me deliverables that I didn't even know about. So now I have, and maybe that's a business ploy, but now we have a long, rich future ahead of us with optional services, which is awesome. So my one piece of advice is whoever is involved in procuring the Guardian or whatever you're trying to do, a credentialing management system or whatever, make sure they know from being on the ground what you expect the system to do. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to work very well. I'm very hands-on in most things. Some things that are like kind of nerdy to me, I'm not, but I know what I want, and you have to be able to articulate that in the request for proposals or the scope of the contract.
This is Jasveer. Thank you very much. That's such an amazing presentation. I just want to share with you something that happened, I think about a few months ago, where TSA Administrator David Pekoski invited us to Washington, D.C., and we thought it would be more like casual meeting. But when we went there, he had his whole leadership team. There were like more than 10 people, all of his direct reports in the room. And he said, based on the success that we had, we want to learn from you. Not only for aviation sector, for your banking sector, for your utility sectors and so on. It was such an amazing meeting. And then obviously he said, we should also be implementing the same kind of things within TSA. So obviously, as you remember, insider threat is a big deal, the audits and all. So the next meeting, we are going to be invited. We would love to have you join us, because I think what you did is amazing. There's no way we could have done the job what you did. So we request you to join us in our next meeting in Washington, D.C. And we'll plan with you. We will obviously discuss that with you. So I'm already thanking you in advance, knowing that you will join us.
No pressure. Well, I heard most of what you said, and I'm always willing to talk about our success stories here. I know most of you there know me, maybe not in the audience, but you know that when somebody deserves to be spoken about in a kind manner, I do that, and I keep my dirty laundry to myself. So always willing to talk about a success story.
Thank you so much, Frank. There are no more questions, but I just wanted to just commend you for the appreciation that you have done for us. Our team is pleased and they are smiling while you were presenting. And they, of course, I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes in, but we appreciate and admire you for acknowledging that hard work and always working with us. So big hug to you and your team. We really appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing with us. And this doesn't go without a great partnership that we have with you. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.